Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to today's morning blast. It is Monday, the 19th of May, all day. As usual, myself and Mr. Michael Brown will be giving you a review of what's happened Friday and the weekend and a preview of what's coming up today and for the rest of the week. But before we do, let's crack on and get the legals out of the way. So, as usual, nothing discussed in this space session constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed that of the magnificent Mr. Michael Brown. How are you, Mr. Michael Brown?
Very good morning, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. I'm very well, thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. Ready to seize the week.
Indeed, yes. A new week is upon us, isn't it? Shall we get into things?
Yes, let's.
Yes, let's, because if you believe folk on the internet this week, Armageddon is upon us. The end is nigh. It's all doom and gloom, and it's all the fault of Moody's after they downgraded the United States on Friday evening, a long time after the close, and also while I was in the pub. So I will admit I completely missed the news until Saturday morning. For those who are unaware, Moody's have downgraded their credit rating on the United States to AA1 from AAA. Moody's were the last of the rating
Yeah.
agencies to have the US at AAA. S&P downgraded them all the way back in 2011. Fitch downgraded them in 2023. So Moody's are very much behind the curve on this one. And to be honest with you, if anyone thinks this actually matters one jot, then go and give your head a bit of a wobble, please, to be completely
Yeah.
honest. What Moody's have said is absolutely nothing new. They're worried about the deficit. They're worried about the fiscal path in the United States. They're worried about where debt GDP is. Well, we've all known that for donkey's years, that it's on an unsustainable path. The fact that one of the credit rating agencies finally decides to wake up from their nap and tell us that in a report that one of their interns has written. Well, thanks very much, but you're rather stating the obvious, to be completely honest with you. There are also, these days at the very least, not that many institutions or investors out there who have got a mandate to hold AAA rated debt. And even those that are, if anyone thinks that the bonds of somewhere like Australia, which has a AAA credit rating, are safer than those of treasuries, then again, keep your head wobbling, I think is probably what I would say to that. I'm not entirely sure this matters one bit. And actually, the market reaction has been, well, kind of bears that out, really. We see the S&P future trading about 1% lower this morning, some selling at the long end of the treasury curve, the 30-year yield popping north of 5% for the first time since April. But all told, relatively contained. And apart from those people looking for cheap headlines and easy clicks on the internet, this news matters not, I
Yeah.
would argue.
No, I would agree with you there.
Indeed. Right. So now we've got that out of the way, we can move on to other bits and bobs that we had as the week drew to a close and also over the weekend. In terms of economic data, we had, frankly, laughable consumer sentiment survey from the University of Michigan. Per their survey, sentiment fell to 50.8 in the month of May, down from a prior 52.2. That is the second lowest headline print ever. We only had one print lower than that during the middle of the pandemic. Meanwhile, inflation expectations, the 1 year inflation expectation, that rose to 7.3%, which is the highest since 1981. The 5 to 10 year inflation expectation, that rose to 4.6% from a prior 4.4. And just going back to that 1 year inflation expectation number, I think among Democrats it was about 9.3% or something laughable. To be completely honest, I think the UMich survey is really not even worth the paper that it's
No.
written on at the moment. It's just becoming absolutely farcical. If anyone seriously thinks that the US economy is in a situation akin to the depths of the pandemic when the entire country was shut down and people couldn't leave their house, then again, go and
Well,
give your head a wobble. I'm
just
saying that a lot this morning.
yeah, but just to simplify it, is like it's become such a political tool now. Like, yeah, if you don't like
Yeah,
something, you're going to just give a random bad number. And the man on the street has no clue what it's going to be in a year's time. Or most well, I'd say 99% of economists are kind of guessing at the best of times anyway.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I agree with you there. These kind of numbers, yes, again, like we said before with the Moody's downgrade, makes a great clickable headline, but does it impact markets one jot? No, not really.
No, absolutely. I am particularly grouchy on this front this morning because there's a lot of this at the moment. There's all this hysteria going around, and it's that classic thing of bad news sells or bad news gets clicks on the internet these days. Whereas in reality, it doesn't actually move the needle
So
particularly much.
to coin a traditional newspaper headline, kind of cliches, if it bleeds, it leads, which basically means if there's anything to do with like someone dying or war or something like that, or that's what gets the headlines going.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We also had the latest housing starts and building permits figures out of the States on Friday, both coming in a little bit below expectations, but nothing worth worrying about too much. In terms of market reaction, the FX space really went nowhere at all as the week drew to a close, although we have seen some modest dollar softness coming in this morning. In fact, the dollar index down about 0.5% at session lows as I speak, around 100 spot 40. That is just a kind of continuation of that sort of quote unquote sell America trade as we see
Yeah.
treasuries soften and equities come lower on the back of that downgrade, which we've obviously already discussed. In terms of other things to mention this morning on the trade front, we heard from sources cited by the FT on Friday that the United States and European Union have for the first time exchanged negotiating documents that they will use to frame their trade and tariff discussions. These documents outline the areas that will be up for negotiation and range from tariffs to digital trade to investment opportunities for both sides. Of course, the US EU deal is arguably the biggest and most important one now. The issue of China seems to be, well, at least temporarily, on the back burner and solved until Trump decides that it isn't. Speaking of Trump, we heard from him on Truth Social over the weekend. He was bashing the Fed once more, saying that Powell is being too late, etc., etc. We don't need to go into all of that nonsense again. What I think was more interesting was Trump is sort of doing an impression of a communist dictator with this one, saying that Walmart should not blame tariffs for raising its prices. Walmart should eat the tariffs and not charge customers higher prices. Not entirely sure that one's going to wash, to be
No,
completely honest with you. Scott Bessent said that in a media interview on Sunday, Walmart will absorb some of the tariffs. Well, I mean, I think we all knew they were going to absorb some of it, but not all of it. But a president trying to tell private companies how they should run their business is not going to end particularly well
no,
if
no.
Trump continues to go down that path. So let's hope he doesn't. Frankly, also towards the back end of Friday, we heard reports via Bloomberg sources that the Fed, they are looking to shrink their workforce by around about 10% over the next few years. These cuts are going to primarily come from natural attrition and are going to come at both the board and regional reserve banks. Personally, I'd like to volunteer Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee to be the first one to
Wow.
go. Well, given that he speaks every 12 hours, it would do us all a favour not to have to listen to him waffling on all day long, to be completely honest with you.
It's better the devil you know than some other random intern that starts perking up.
Well, yeah, true, I suppose. And then a
Like
couple of things from.
can you imagine Henna's talking every week?
I did just think of Hennes actually.
Poor
If
little
he's listening,
Henry.
good morning, Hennes.
Poor little
Um,
Henry.
Probably too early for the young man. A couple of bits and bobs from this morning as well. Reports via Bloomberg, and then this has been backed up by Sky News and all the UK papers, saying that the UK and the European Union have agreed a deal to strengthen ties between the two countries. There is apparently going to be a press conference a little bit later on to unveil the full terms of this deal after the negotiating teams agreed a text at about 2 o'clock this morning. The agreement reportedly includes three different agreements, which is slightly convoluted. The first is a defence and security partnership. The second is a quote joint statement as to how the European Union and the UK will work together on various geopolitical challenges. And Bloomberg, I've only just realised Bloomberg haven't told me what the third text is, so that will be anyone's guess. Although there was reporting over the weekend that there will be some concession. The UK will grant some concessions around fishing, potentially allowing current fishing quotas to stay in place until 2038, which is going to rile up quite a few people, and rightly so. There was also talk that the UK may align with EU food safety regulations. Again, that's going to rightly rile up quite a lot of people. And a few bits and bobs on immigration as well. There is talk that the UK and the EU are going to work towards this youth mobility scheme that the EU have been talking about for quite some time. That would basically grant youngsters in the EU the right to temporarily live and work in the UK, sort of not quite freedom of movement, but sort of close to it. But on the flip side of that, there is also talk that the European Union will finally allow UK citizens to use passport e-gates when they land at
Oh,
European
well,
airports.
wow. Well, if they do that, what will the Remainers have to moan about?
Well, quite. And can I just say, actually, on
Oh,
that
God,
one,
get comfy.
for quite some time now, because we are taking the moral high ground here in the UK,
Of course.
EU citizens have been able to walk through passport e-gates in the UK ever since Brexit.
Yeah, because
It's just those obstinate ones in Brussels who've gone, no, we won't let you do the same thing.
yeah, children. They're children. Nothing more than children.
Indeed. And a few other headlines from me this morning. Just lastly, out of Asia, we had some data out of China this morning. Retail sales coming in a little bit soft in April, rising by 5.1% on an annual basis, down from the 5.8% consensus. Industrial production came in better than expected at 6.1% compared to the 5.7% expectation. Again, China data, so take it with a pinch of salt. And lastly, reporting via Bloomberg sources, just as we came to air, the Trump administration, the Trump organization, forgive me, are reportedly mulling building a tower in Ho Chi Minh City.
Yeah.
So just you wait until there is a line in the Vietnam-US trade deal around relaxing planning permission for US developers.
There you go. There you go, indeed. Well, exactly. Well, I think you were kind of right with the first one. Administration, I think, is possibly
Yeah,
closer
I was
to.
going to say it's a very blurred line
I was
between
gonna
the
say,
two at the moment, isn't it?
I
Let's
think
be
they're,
completely honest.
yeah, I think they're very interchangeable at this point. But Michael, thank you for that. So just reading out some choice headlines from the always awesome Overnight News Roundup, which again, if you're not already subscribing to it, do so. You get all of the market moving news sent to your inbox via our Substack, which is curated by the amazing Zach. Even when he is on holiday, which is thankfully quite often.
He's not on holiday again, is he?
No, not again. No. He's probably
Oh,
got
right.
one booked, though. No doubt he's got one booked. But start off with some trade news. Trump open to meeting President Xi, obviously China, to discuss trade and foreign policy, aims to counter Beijing's Gulf influence. Trump urges Walmart and China to absorb tariff costs, as Michael alluded to just now, and not pass them on to customers. That was going to Trump on Truth Social. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bezant says Trump will impose promised tariffs on non-negotiable trade partners. Pardon me. That's kind of for me. That's another angle that they're kind of be looking at the EU for, because a lot of these kind of, I think one thing that's going to come up a lot is how the EU and Brussels in general kind of love to pick a fight with US tech companies.
Yes.
So that would be definitely something that's come up. US.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
VP Vance meets EU and Canadian leaders, pushes for progress in trade talks. Japan's PM Ishida prioritizes national interests, resists Russia-US trade deal. I did see a headline as well from him. I think it was Toshiba, saying that Japan's economy is worse than Greece's at the moment.
Yeah, I saw something like that. I didn't.
Barrage posted. He said that's basically like Bournemouth finishing above Man United in the Premier League. I'd go even worse, say Brentford. But there you go.
There must be some extra context around that I've missed, because surely you didn't just stand up and say that for the sake of it.
Yeah, I get the feeling that someone may have asked, like, is this as bad as, like, the Euro crisis or something like that? Because otherwise, why would you just pull out, why would you pick on Greece?
Yeah, true.
So I think something's obviously been said to trigger that reaction. China's rare earth export approvals lag under new rules, risking global supply chain difficulties and disruptions. We also know that obviously China have got severe export restrictions imposed on rare earths at the moment. So see how that one develops. China imposes up to a 74.9% anti-dumping duties on POM polymers. I'm not sure what that means. Look, at least
Nor am I.
EU, Japan, and Taiwan. Australia's PM Albanese expresses cautious optimism for EU trade deals after years of talks. Macro, obviously, we know about Moody's downgrade in the US. US Treasury Secretary Bezant dismisses Moody's downgrade, cites Middle East investment pledges. Not quite sure how that mitigates the downgrade, but yeah, whatever works for him.
No, but I do agree with when Besant was saying that Moody's are a lagging indicator
Oh yeah,
and
no,
they're
that's
just sort
it.
of catching up, I think he was absolutely spot on that one. I mean, the Middle East stuff's
Oh
just
yeah,
bollocks, to
no,
be
no,
honest.
exactly. Like if your argument should be, look, well, you could be ballsy and say your argument could be what we said this morning, that well, actually Moody's are the last one to do it. So I think this is more a case of Moody's being a bit behind the curve than anything else. Obviously,
Yeah,
that's not great optics if it's your administration that they've cut on. But
no, it's
throwing
not.
that
But
Middle East, throwing the Middle East thing in them, I get, shit, you got to always do a shit sandwich. So good news, bad news, good news. But yeah, I'm not quite sure where the Middle East stuff, how that he's trying to play that in. But yeah, if it works for him, it works for me.
the thing is, they're the biggest and best investment deals that the world has ever seen. So
Well, biggest and best, yeah, as always. US
until the
Treasury,
next one.
yeah, exactly. US Treasury yields exceed 5% amid fiscal concerns post downgrade. House panel approves Trump's tax cut bill. Vote expected on Thursday or by Thursday. Trump's criticized Fed's power gain, urges rate cuts to avoid economic missteps. China's Treasury holdings fall below UK's, which got a lot of headlines over the weekend. Obviously, the UK now being the second largest buyer of US or holder of US Treasuries. That's China's holding is now the lowest since 2000. I'm surprised we haven't seen more of the usual talking heads on Twitter kind of picking up on these China Treasury holdings falling, because they do normally love a China to use Treasuries as a weapon kind of line. So no doubt they'll wake up and see these headlines and start making some random posts about that. Goldman Sachs raises 10-year Treasury yield forecast of 4.5%, citing US-China trade tariffs. China industrial output grows 6.1% in April, but retail sales slow to 5.1%. Sticking with China, China's new home prices, flat in April, extending a nearly 2-year stagnation. And moving to Europe, ECB's watch suggests that rate cuts below 2% due to trade tension risks. Sorry, that's in the FT. Geopolitics, Russia launches largest drone attack on Ukraine since the war began, ahead of Trump-Putin ceasefire talks. Iran's Khamenei.
Didn't they? Sorry, just to
Yeah.
jump in on that one. I may be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that this happened, or a similar thing happened last time. The day before they were meant to be,
Yeah.
some sort of peace talks.
Oh, no,
Russia just
absolutely.
went, "Fuck it, we'll bomb the crap out
Yeah,
of you," kind
funny
of thing.
enough, I see Angie. Hi, Angie. She's listening in. So obviously we do the Grain Blast every day at 2:15 UK time. So we've been saying for months now that what you'll tend to see is just before the talk starts, that's when you'll see the big push, because it's an extra land grab, or it's just impacting more pain, which kind of should instigate more kind of Ukraine biting the bullet a bit harder. But no one to keep an eye on. But it does play into form to how we've seen these things going on in the past. Iran Khamenei accuses Trump of lying about peace, cites US nuclear talk inconsistencies. Israel activates troops in Gaza for ground operation to demilitarize Hamas and free hostages. Taiwan's Coast Guard warns of Chinese attempts to disrupt morale ahead of president's anniversary. I just smashed my laptop. Equity news. Alibaba shares dip after scrutiny over Apple's potential AI deal with Alibaba and China. This is the AI deal, isn't it? This is where they're going to be having Alibaba AI on Apple devices. Again, I think this is one of the promises that Apple need to make to the Chinese in order to allow sales and stuff to open freely in China. Basically, have more Chinese apps and whatnot on the phones. NVIDIA to build AI supercomputer in Taiwan with Foxconn. TSMC and government support behind that. NVIDIA rules out the new Hopper chip for China, evaluates market strategy post US export limits. Qualcomm to produce custom data center CPUs using NVIDIA tech for AI integrations. I do kind of feel that this part is now sponsored by NVIDIA. Pro takes orders for AI systems with NVIDIA RTX Pro.
Oh, for goodness' sake!
GPUs. It's very NVIDIA. I know. I think there is some kind of conference going on, which might be why there's so many.
NVIDIA. My invite got lost in the post. For that
mine
one, sadly.
too. Mine too. I think it's probably in the same post box somewhere. JP Morgan Chase highlights CEO succession candidates at Investor Day. Xiaomi plans a 6.93 billion chip design investment over 10 years. Zach tells me, yes, there is a NVIDIA's Jensen is doing a big conference thing in a big event in Taiwan at the moment. So that'd be the reason why we've had a lot.
There you go. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Zach. CATL, Cattle, which we were pronouncing it today, predicts 50% of China's heavy truck sales will be electric by 2028. Diageo,
I mean, they do have a bit of a vested interest in that one,
well, of
let's be
course they do.
honest.
What, you mean the biggest battery maker for EVs?
Yeah.
Oh, colour me shocked. Diageo forecasts 150 million tariff hit, launches a 500 million cost saving program. Obviously, the Guinness owner there. Ryanair, finally finishing on this, reports expected earnings decline but sees fair recovery amid strong demand. So there's a bit of turbulence at the moment.
Oh dear.
I know. I just can't live up to you, so why bother? I just go for the really decent ones. I don't come to the office dressed as part of a pun. But anyway, back to you in the studio.
Well, that was it, was it? You've ended on that note, right? Fine. In terms,
Yes,
I was expecting more, to be honest. Right, in terms of
that's what she said.
today, then. It is actually a relatively barren data docket to kick off the week, and actually the docket is quite light throughout the rest of the week as well, to be completely honest with you, which I'll get on to momentarily. In terms of today, though, at 10 o'clock this morning, we have the only notable release of the day, which is the final CPI figures out of the Eurozone for April. They're expected to be unrevised at 2.2% on an annual basis. We do, though, have plenty of central bank speakers today. We're due to hear from the Fed's Bostic, Kashkari, Logan, Williams, and Jefferson. There is some sort of conference going on at the Atlanta Fed that they will all be speaking at today. The earnings docket is pretty much empty in terms of notable reports. In any case, just on earnings, this week is relatively light. The most impactful upcoming report that comes on the 28th of May to continue with our sponsorship segment, and that is, of course, the report from Nvidia, which comes next Wednesday. In terms of the remainder of this week, though, just to go through day by day a few highlights. Tomorrow, we've got a policy decision due from Australia. The RBA is set to deliver this cycle's second rate reduction, delivering a 25 basis point cut and lowering the cash rate to 3.85%. Also tomorrow, we have inflation figures from Canada and consumer confidence data out of the Eurozone. And as well, tomorrow we have earnings from Home Depot, of course, a useful consumer barometer, but also from Ryan and I's favourite name company, Pony AI. They will be reporting before the market open tomorrow. Into Wednesday, we have the latest inflation data from here in the UK. Headline CPI is seen having risen to 3.3% on an annual basis in April, up from the prior 2.6%. Of course, we know that a whole host of annual price hikes and energy price increases will skew the data higher when we get that reading on Wednesday morning. We also have a 20-year Treasury auction out of the States on Wednesday as well. Into Thursday, it is flash PMI day, so we have the latest sentiment surveys due from pretty much every major global economy, expecting a modest pickup in all of these indicators in the month of May as we move past the sort of peak of tariff-related uncertainty. But nonetheless, here in the UK, at the very least, the composite output gauge, that is expected to remain below 50 and continue to imply a contraction in the economy overall. Also on Thursday, we have minutes due from the April ECB meeting, as well as the weekly US jobless claims data, where the initial claims print will coincide with the May non-farm payrolls survey week. And then wrapping things up on Friday, we have inflation figures out of Japan, retail sales from both the UK and from Canada, and also we have new home sales data out of the United States. And of course, amid all of those scheduled events, which, as I said, are somewhat lacking this week compared to where they have been recently, we will also continue to closely monitor developments on the trade front, whether any more deals are, or quote unquote deals, are struck this week now that Trump has returned to Washington, D.C., and also a focus on geopolitical developments as well, as Ryan alluded to earlier on, this call between Trump and Putin, which is scheduled for 10 o'clock Eastern today. And that is, for now, your lot from me.
Well, I will just I will finish this off with a headline that's dropped whilst we've been talking, which is the EU countries agree on a big defence fund that's gone to diplomats. The EU countries have in principle agreed on proposals for a 150 billion with a B euro fund aimed at boosting Europe's defence, known as the Security Action for Europe Fund, SAFE. And EU on Monday. This is obviously going to be more good news for the likes of Raymond Tal and all those European defence names, which have been screaming in recent weeks, months. But Michael,
And well, sorry, I was going to say there's only one job left for the EU folk now, which is to figure out another acronym which allows the ECB to buy most of those bonds that they're going to need.
we do love an acronym. Yep, absolutely. And you know for a fact the ECB will be the buyer of last resort for these.
Oh, 100%.
100%. My dear friend Michael, thank you so much as always. Listeners, I hope you all had a great weekend. I hope you have a great week. And I hope to see you all tomorrow. Take care. Much love.
Bye bye.